My name is Melissa Carter, and I'm 35 years old now. But the story I'm about to tell you is something that has lived in my heart since the day it happened. Before we go too far, I want to welcome everyone watching. Tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing how far stories can travel. Let me start by introducing myself properly. I grew up in a quiet home in Minnesota, a place where winters were loud with snowstorms and summers smelled like warm grass. I was the youngest child, with an older brother named David, and two parents who believed our family should always stay close. I was always the soft one, kind, patient, trusting. I helped neighbors shovel snow, carried groceries for old ladies on our street, and I believed kindness was like a little light you carried everywhere with you. But even the gentlest person can find herself standing in the middle of a storm she never saw coming. And that storm began on the morning of my 22nd birthday. I still remember waking up that day. It was so silent in the house that the air felt worried. Not quiet, worried. You know, the kind of silence that makes you sit up before your eyes are even fully open. That kind. The sunlight was slipping through my curtains, the soft kind that usually makes a birthday morning feel special, but that day it felt off. I walked downstairs expecting balloons, or at least my mom humming while making breakfast. But nothing. The whole house felt empty. My heart started beating a little faster. Something inside me whispered that something wasn't right. I checked the garage. Both my parents' cars were gone. My brother's too. No note. No message. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, feeling like the world had tilted the wrong way. Then my phone buzzed. A simple message from an unknown number. We are handling something important. Stay home. No happy birthday. No explanation. Just instructions. A heavy feeling filled my chest, but instead of crying or panicking, I walked to the wine rack, picked a bottle of white wine, and poured myself a cup. I remember thinking, if they want to act strange today, let me at least drink something nice. Then my phone buzzed again. This time a message from a cousin who shouldn't have known anything at all. Your parents and David are at the lawyer's office. My stomach twisted. A lawyer. On my birthday. All of them together. And nobody told me. Didn't make sense. Then another message came in. They're changing the inheritance. For a moment, everything around me froze. The sound of the refrigerator hum disappeared. The clock ticking above the counter felt louder. My heartbeat felt like it was trying to knock its way out of my chest. My whole family had a private meeting to sideline me. On my birthday. And not one of them thought I deserved to know. But here's the part that surprises people. I didn't break down. I didn't scream. I didn't call them. I didn't even feel angry, just tired. Tired in the kind of way that happens when you give kindness your whole life, and someone decides to treat you like you are invisible. I took another sip of wine, sat on the stool by the counter, and quietly said to myself, if they can play quietly, then so can I. I picked up my phone and called Anthony, my real estate agent, a smart man with sharp eyes and faster thinking. The moment he picked up, I didn't even greet him. I need this property sold before 24 hours, I said calmly. There was a pause on the other end. Anthony was never a man who got surprised easily, but that morning he sounded like he almost dropped his phone. Melissa, what's going on? He asked. But I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Because here's something about me you should know. I grew up believing kindness was strength, not weakness. That helping people didn't make you soft. It made you powerful in a different way. But that birthday morning taught me something new. Kindness should never be a door people use to walk over you. And that day, I decided I would never again let myself be sidelined without standing up for what was mine. But before I tell you exactly how I got to that moment, sitting with a cup of wine, giving an order that could flip my whole family upside down, let me take you back a little. Let me show you how my life slowly led to that strange, quiet birthday morning. Because no story begins at its peak. The mountain has a path, and mine is filled with both soft moments and painful lessons. I want you to understand who I was, who they were, and why the choice I made that morning was not just about inheritance, but about finally choosing myself. I grew up watching my mom work as a nurse and my dad run a small construction company. They were loving, but everything, every decision, every plan, every expectation, always circled around my brother. David was the first son, the heir, the important one. I was the afterthought, the good girl who was expected to smile, help, and stay quiet. But I didn't mind. Not when I was little. I learned to give love without expecting too much back. I learned that people noticed kindness only when it wasn't there. Yet I stayed gentle, stayed hopeful, stayed believing that love comes back eventually. But sometimes, it doesn't. And sometimes, you have to make the return happen yourself. I wish I could tell you that everything leading up to my 22nd birthday was peaceful, but that would be a lie. There were cracks, little ones at first. Arguments about decisions I wasn't included in. Whispers behind closed doors. Papers my dad never let me see. Words like legacy and ownership, thrown around like they were too heavy for me to hold. Still I stayed kind. I stayed patient. I stayed trusting. But on that birthday morning, something inside me finally woke up. And when I told Anthony to sell the property, it wasn't just a business move. It was the first time in my life I chose myself. And that is where this story begins. But the morning didn't stay calm for long. Because as I waited for Anthony to call me back, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything again. The front door suddenly opened. Froze. The step. Low. Heavy. Coming toward the kitchen. And when I looked up, I saw someone standing there who was never supposed to be home. The extreme event hits here. But we aren't going to talk about it. Not yet. The moment I looked up and saw him standing there, my breath caught in my chest. The house that had felt empty and silent only moments ago suddenly felt too full, filled with the kind of tension that makes the air feel thick. I gripped the edge of the counter, my wine glass still in my hand, my heart beating in a slow, heavy thud that echoed in my ears. Because the person standing in the doorway, watching me with an expression I could not read, was David, my older brother. He was supposed to be at the lawyer's office with my parents. He was supposed to be part of the secret meeting that left me out. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not now. Not before I understood what they were planning. Not before I had time to think. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Felt like we were standing in the middle of a paused movie. Then he stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that still felt too loud in the quiet house. I swallowed hard, trying to look calm even though my pulse was racing. "You're home early," I said, keeping my voice steady. David didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, really looked at me like he was trying to read my thoughts. He was always good at that, always sharp, always 2 steps ahead in whatever game the family was playing. "You're dressed," he said finally. "You're awake earlier than usual." That wasn't what he wanted to say. It was just the safe thing to say. I lifted my glass and took a soft sip of wine. "It's my birthday," I replied. "Thought I should be awake for it." David's jaw tightened. For a second I wondered if he remembered. If any of them remembered. Then he took a slow breath. "Melissa, we need to talk." Cold shiver ran down my back. Anytime someone says that sentence, especially family, it never means anything good. But I didn't show it. Instead, I set my wine glass on the counter and leaned back casually, pretending I wasn't shaken. "All right," I said. "Talk." David walked closer, stopping a few feet in front of me. His eyes drifted to my phone on the counter, then back to me. "We went to the lawyer," he said carefully. "There are things happening, decisions being made. And whatever you think you know, I know enough," I cut in gently. Not angry, not loud. Just tired. His eyebrows twitched. "Who told you? Does it matter?" Yes. He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. They didn't want me to know yet. They weren't ready for me to know. They weren't expecting me to react. And they certainly weren't expecting me to stay calm. But calm was exactly what I was giving him. "You weren't supposed to hear anything until tonight," David said. "Mom wanted to explain it to you herself." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because I had spent my whole life waiting for this family to explain things to me directly. They never did. They just made decisions and expected me to smile. David, I said softly, why were you all meeting with a lawyer without me? He looked down. That told me more than words ever could. In that moment, I remembered something from when we were kids. David and I used to sit on the porch during summer evenings, counting fireflies in the yard. He would protect me from bullies, tie my shoelaces when they came undone, and chase away the neighbor's dog when it scared me. He had been good once, kind once. But something changed over the years. Maybe it was pressure. Maybe pride. Maybe the idea of being the heir was too shiny, too tempting. But the biggest lesson life had taught me was this. People change when money is involved. Even the ones you love. David lifted his head again. Mom and Dad wanted everything simpler. Easier to manage. I didn't ask for any of this. That was a lie. A gentle lie, but still a lie. I didn't call him out on it. The house felt smaller now, like the walls were leaning in. The silence between us stretched until it felt like it could snap. Then, just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed on the counter. David's eyes dropped to it immediately. "Who's that?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. I picked up the phone slowly. It was a message from Anthony. "We can move fast. Waiting for your confirmation." My stomach tightened. David stepped closer. "Too close." "Who are you talking to?" he asked again. This was a less extreme moment, but it felt heavy, like a rope tightening around my choices. I slid my phone into my pocket. "A friend," I answered, calm as ever. "What friend?" he pressed. I smiled a soft, simple smile. "One who listens." David stared at me for a long, long moment. His jaw clenched again. Then he turned his back to me, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Melissa, you need to trust us. Everything happening today is for the good of the family." There it was. The line people always use right before they betray you. I stepped past him and walked toward the living room, needing space to breathe. "Funny," I said quietly, "because it feels like the good of the family doesn't include me." He followed. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I replied. "I'm being honest." Something hardened in his expression. "You're making things difficult. And you're making decisions without me." The room fell silent again. That's when I noticed something. David wasn't calm. He wasn't collected. He wasn't even confident. He was nervous. And if my brother was nervous, something bigger was happening. Something I didn't know about yet. I was about to ask him what exactly the lawyer meeting was for when. The front door burst open. Not gently. Not quietly. David and I both spun around. And standing in the doorway was someone who should never have been part of this moment. Someone who was not supposed to know anything yet. Someone whose presence meant something had already gone wrong. Their face was red. Their chest was heaving. Their eyes were wild with panic. "Melissa," the person gasped, "you need to come with me. Now." And just like that, the next extreme event hit. The kind that changes everything all over again. And that is where we stop for now. The moment those words left their mouth. "Melissa, you need to come with me. Now." The entire house felt like it tilted. My heartbeat thumped hard enough that I could feel it in my fingertips. The doorway framed a figure I never expected to see this early. Not today, not in this moment. It was Aunt Claire, my mother's older sister. The only person in the family who ever treated me like I mattered just as much as David. The woman who slipped me birthday cards with long notes about bravery and strength. The woman who once told me, "Sweetheart, your kindness is your superpower. Don't let anyone make you feel small." And she was standing in the doorway looking like she had run through a storm. Her hair was messy, one of her shoes half off, and her car keys were still clutched in her hand like she'd nearly forgotten she owned fingers. Her chest rose and fell quickly, panic written all over her face. David stepped toward her immediately. "Aunt Claire, what are you doing here? You can't just barge in." But she didn't even look at him. Her eyes were glued to me. Wait. Terrified. "Melissa," she repeated, her voice trembling. "We have to leave. Right now." My mouth parted slightly. "Aunt Claire, what's wrong?" She shook her head, wiping sweat from her forehead. Not here. Not in front of him. David's eyes widened. What is that supposed to mean? He snapped. You know exactly what it means. The room fell into a tight, painful silence. David's jaw hardened. Aunt Claire's breathing grew louder. I stood there caught between them, confusion twisting in my stomach. This was no longer a normal family argument. This was something deeper, something darker, something planned maybe by all of them, or maybe only some of them. I stepped toward her slowly. Aunt Claire, you're scaring me. Good, she whispered. Fear will keep you alive today. Cold chill raced down my spine. David took a step forward, raising his hands. Claire, stop this. You're out of line. Out of line, she barked, spinning toward him. You went along with this. You agreed to keep her in the dark while they... Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, and then she whispered something I almost didn't catch. They weren't supposed to move this fast. My breath stopped. David's eyes flickered, guilt, then panic, then anger. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about, she said, pointing a shaking finger at him. Where are your parents? Why aren't they answering their phones? Why is the lawyer saying the meeting is taking longer than expected? Why? David cut in sharply. Enough. But the way he said it. It wasn't the voice of an older brother trying to keep the peace. It was the voice of someone trying very, very hard to keep a secret. Big one. The air thickened until it felt like breathing syrup. I looked between them. My brother tense and guarded, my aunt frantic and terrified. Something huge was happening, something I didn't understand, but my instincts whispered. This is not about money anymore. This is not about inheritance anymore. This is something else entirely. Aunt Claire reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her hand was cold. We need to go, she repeated urgently. Please, Melissa. Trust me. And here's the strange part. I did. It wasn't because of her words. It wasn't even because of the fear in her voice. It was because of her eyes. They held the same look she had years ago when she pulled me away from a dog that nearly bit me. The same fierce, protective spark that always showed up when she felt I was in danger. My lips parted, but before I could say anything, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Aunt Claire froze. David looked sharply at me. I pulled the phone out slowly. Another message from Anthony. But this one wasn't like the last. Call me ASAP. It's urgent. My chest tightened. David stepped closer. Who is that? Show me. No, I said quietly, stepping back from him. Melissa. I said no. His eyes darkened, something cold sliding into them. I had never seen that expression on my brother's face before. A flash of something like fear wrapped in anger. Or anger wrapped in fear. Aunt Claire moved between us protectively. Don't you dare touch her. David scoffed. Touch her. I'm trying to help. No, she hissed. You're trying to control the situation. Just like your parents. He swallowed hard, guilt moving across his face so fast he tried to hide it. And then, everything shifted. We heard the sound. Car. Pulling up fast. Tires crunching on gravel. A door slamming shut. Then footsteps. Heavy ones. Someone else was approaching. Someone who wasn't supposed to be here. Someone whose arrival made Aunt Claire whisper a single word under her breath. No. She tightened her grip on my wrist. Melissa, don't look out the window. But I did. I couldn't help it. I turned my head toward the driveway. And standing there, stepping out of a black SUV, was a person whose presence made every drop of warmth in my body vanish. Someone I never expected to see today. Someone who had no reason to show up. Someone who should have been miles away. The most extreme moment yet. My jaw dropped. Aunt Claire gasped. David whispered, "Oh God." Because the person walking toward the house was my father, covered in blood. My father stood in the driveway, the morning light catching on the red stains splattered across his shirt and hands. For a moment, My mind refused to understand what I was seeing. It was like looking at a picture that didn't make sense, like the colors were wrong, the shapes were wrong, the whole image was wrong. My father was a man who wore clean shirts to take out the trash. A man who carried hand sanitizer everywhere. A man who once yelled at David for tracking mud onto the carpet. This was not a sight that fit into my world. Aunt Claire's grip on my wrist tightened until it almost hurt. "Melissa," she whispered, her voice thinner than air. "Don't move." But I couldn't move even if I wanted to. My legs felt glued to the floor. My breath stuck in my throat. My heart thumped slow and heavy like it was learning a new rhythm. David took a shaky step backward. His face drained of color. "Dad, what happened?" My father didn't answer. He walked toward the front door with slow, uneven steps. Not rushed, not panicked, just steady. Like a man finishing a long walk. He stopped at the door. He didn't knock. He just opened it. And when he stepped inside and closed it behind him, the whole house seemed to exhale all at once. Aunt Claire positioned herself in front of me like a shield. "Stay behind me," she muttered. My father looked at her, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he spoke. "Claire," he said calmly, "move." "No," she answered immediately. His eyes moved to me. They weren't wild. They weren't angry. They were blank. Completely blank. Like someone had turned off the light inside him. "Melissa," he said, "go upstairs." My voice barely worked. "Dad, you're bleeding." He glanced down at his shirt like he'd only just noticed it. "It's not my blood." A chill ran up my spine and down again twice. Aunt Claire stepped closer to him. "Where is your wife?" she demanded. "Where is my sister? What did you do? What happened at that lawyer's office?" He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his hand and wiped something, blood, sweat, both, off his forehead with the back of his wrist. Then he said, "Everyone needs to calm down." "Calm down," Aunt Claire snapped. "You show up covered in blood, you disappear for hours, you lock Melissa out of family decisions for months, and you say calm down?" Dad's jaw clenched slightly. "You're making this bigger than it is." Aunt Claire laughed. A short, sharp laugh with no humor. "Oh really? Then tell us whose blood that is." David took a slow breath. "Dad, please. We deserve to know." Dad's eyes flicked to him. Just once. Just for a second. And that look said everything. It was the look of a man carrying something too heavy to explain. I didn't want to understand it, but I did. Something terrible had happened. And we were standing in the middle of it without knowing how deep it went. He finally spoke again. "Everything that happened today was to protect the family." I felt my stomach twist. Those words again. For the good of the family. First David, now him. But protect us from what? I took a tiny step forward, even though Aunt Claire tried to block me. "Dad, where's Mom?" His expression didn't change. But something in his shoulders, something in the way he held himself, shifted. Just a little. Just enough. "She's safe," he said. It didn't feel like the truth. Not even close. Aunt Claire must have felt it too because she suddenly pushed past him and ran toward the hallway. "Mary! Mary!" she shouted, calling for her sister. Dad didn't stop her. He didn't move at all. David moved closer to him. "Dad, tell us what's going on." But Dad's eyes were still on me. Like I was the only person in the room. "Melissa," he said softly. "Did you call anyone? Did you talk to anyone? Did you tell someone to do something today?" My heart stopped. He knew. Somehow. He knew I'd contacted Anthony. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My tongue felt like stone. Dad stepped toward me. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone approaching a fragile object. "Sweetheart," he said gently. "I need you to tell me exactly what you did this morning." Aunt Claire's voice echoed from down the hall. "Mary's not here. She's not here." David's face tightened. "Dad, where is Mom?" But Dad didn't look at him. He kept walking toward me. One step. Another. His bloody hand reached up, Not fast, not threatening, but still terrifying, and he gently cupped the side of my face. The coldness of his fingers made me flinch. "Tell me," he whispered, "what you did with the property." My breath shook. I didn't sign anything yet." "Yet," he repeated. His voice was calm. Calm. The kind of calm that hides storms under the surface. Aunt Claire came running back into the room. Her face was wet with tears. She hadn't even realized she'd cried. "She's gone," she said. "Your mother is gone." Dad closed his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. And when he opened them again, something in the air changed. The house felt too small, too quiet, too dangerous. "We need to leave," Aunt Claire said, grabbing my arm again. "Right now. We can't stay here." David stepped in front of the door. "No one is leaving until we know the truth." "Move, David," Aunt Claire snapped. I said no. But before either of them could say another word, someone's phone rang. Loud, sharp, echoing through the quiet. It wasn't mine. It wasn't David's. It wasn't Aunt Claire's. It was my father's. He looked at his phone, and the name on the screen made him go pale. His hand trembled just slightly. Then he whispered something that made my stomach drop so fast I felt dizzy. "It's the lawyer." A chill ripped through the room. Aunt Claire backed up, pulling me with her. David froze completely. My father answered the call. "Hello," he said quietly. A long silence. Long enough for him to close his eyes. Long enough for the rest of us to hold our breath. Long enough for something inside my father to break. Then he whispered, "Oh God, no." My heart lurched. Aunt Claire's grip tightened. David took a small step forward. Dad, what happened?" Dad slowly lowered the phone. His eyes were glassy. "Me, chicken." Then he said 7 words that shattered the room. "The lawyer's office has been attacked." The silence that followed felt like the world had stopped turning. And the words hung in the air like smoke. "The lawyer's office has been attacked." For a few seconds, everything inside the house went silent. Not the normal kind of silence. Not the soft, peaceful kind. This one was hard. Heavy. The kind of silence that squeezes your lungs, makes your hands cold, and forces your mind to race in every direction at once. David was the first to move. His voice cracked. "Attacked by who?" My father didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. His hand still holding the phone like he'd forgotten how fingers worked. His shoulders trembled, not a lot, just slightly, but I'd never seen him shake before. Not even when his business almost collapsed years ago. Not even when David had his big accident. He was always the strong one. Aunt Claire slowly stepped forward. "What do you mean attacked?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is everyone okay? Is Mary okay?" Dad didn't speak. He didn't even look at her. And that was all the answer she needed. Aunt Claire covered her mouth with both hands. A soft, broken sound escaped her lips. The kind of sound people make only when their heart cracks. My own heart squeezed painfully. My mind tried to piece together everything, but nothing fit. Nothing made sense. Why was my father covered in blood? Where was my mother? What did the lawyer's office have to do with any of this? And why was all of this happening on the day my family had gone to secretly change the inheritance? David took the phone from Dad's hand gently. "Who called?" he asked. Dad finally blinked and whispered, "The assistant. She was hiding." Hiding. That one word made my stomach twist. Aunt Claire walked toward Dad slowly, as though approaching a frightened animal. "What did she say?" she asked carefully. Dad swallowed hard. "She said the place was destroyed. People hurt. Some missing. Some she couldn't tell." His voice cracked slightly. "She said Mom and the lawyer stepped out before it happened." I gasped softly. Relief and fear tangled inside me like 2 ropes fighting each other. Mom survived. But she was missing. Missing was almost as scary as the alternative. Aunt Claire pressed her hand to her chest. "We have to find her." David nodded quickly. We need to call the police. Dad suddenly grabbed his arm. No. No. David yanked his arm free. Dad, we can't handle this alone. Dad looked up at him with eyes full of something I couldn't read. Fear? Guilt? Both. You don't understand. The police can't help us. Aunt Claire frowned. What do you mean they can't help us? Dad wiped his bloody hands on his shirt unconsciously. Because whatever this is, whoever did this, they're not afraid of the law. My heart skipped a beat. David shook his head. Dad, that doesn't make sense. It does, Dad whispered. More than you know. Aunt Claire glared at him. Tell us everything. Right now. Dad sat down heavily on the nearest chair, like his legs finally gave out. I didn't want Melissa involved, he said quietly. I didn't want her dragged into any of this. That sentence made something inside me snap. Dragged into what? I asked, taking a step forward. Dad, what is happening? Why was I left out of the will meeting? Why did you show up covered in blood? Where is Mom? Why did the lawyer's office get attacked? And what does any of this have to do with me? My voice broke on the last word. My father lifted his eyes to mine. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tired. Defeated. Like someone trying to hold a wall from collapsing with bare hands. Melissa, he whispered. We were changing the will to protect you. My breath caught. David's jaw clenched. Aunt Claire froze mid-step. Dad continued, voice trembling. We found out something dangerous, connected to an old business deal I made years ago. Something we thought was gone. But it wasn't. Came back. And it wants something from this family. I felt the world tilt again. What does it want? I asked. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered. You! Cold wave washed over me. No! Aunt Claire muttered. No, that can't be right. David turned toward Dad, eyes blazing. Why would anyone want Melissa? She didn't even know about your business stuff. That's exactly why, Dad said. Because she's the only one who doesn't know. The only one who was supposed to stay safe. I shook my head. My chest felt tight. My hands felt numb. But I didn't do anything. Dad let out a broken sigh. You don't have to do anything to be a target, sweetheart. Sometimes being innocent makes you the most valuable person in the room. I stepped back slowly. Everything inside me twisted. My 22nd birthday. The quiet house. The secret meeting, the messages, the lawyer. The attack. Mom disappearing. It all connected to something I didn't even know existed. Aunt Claire wiped her eyes and straightened her back. We need to leave this house right now. They may have tracked him here. David looked around nervously. Tracked who? Dad didn't answer. Instead, he stood up slowly. Everyone grab what you can. We have to move. We're running out of. Before he could finish that sentence, glass shattered. The window behind the couch exploded inward with a violent crash. Everyone ducked instinctively. A sharp object flew across the room and embedded itself in the wall with a thud. My heart dropped into my stomach. Because sticking out of the wall was a small metal dart. Aunt Claire grabbed my arm again. Run! Dad lunged forward. Get away from the windows. But before we could move, a second dart smashed through another window. David shouted. They're here! Dad yelled. Down! Everyone get down! My knees buckled. Aunt Claire pulled me to the floor just as a third dart zipped over our heads, slicing the air with a soft whistle. From outside came the most chilling sound I'd ever heard. Slow clap. A man's voice calling out. Happy birthday, Melissa. And that is where we end the story and the entire series. Hope you enjoy the story. Please like and subscribe to my channel.